Shooting at a synagogue in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Just moments ago, police reporting there are multiple casualties with 3 officers shot. The suspect is in custody. This all happening at the Tree of Life Synagogue in the area of Wilkins and Shady Avenues in Pittsburgh's Squirrel Hill neighborhood. Multiple law enforcement agencies now responding. Police are telling people in that area to avoid the area. They are also telling people who live in that neighborhood to stay in their houses and lock their doors, saying it is not safe to be out. You can see there is a heavy police presence at that location. We are also told that ATF is responding as well. Let's check in now with Pierre Thomas, our senior Justice Department correspondent. Pierre, what's the latest that you're hearing?
Well, federal authorities are obviously now aware of the situation. As you just mentioned, ATF is responding to the scene. I imagine that we will also see an FBI presence. Awful situation. Obviously, law enforcement in these kind of situations will share information as quickly as they can. Senior officials here in Washington are trying to get additional information. So, obviously, with the location being a synagogue, a place of worship, law enforcement officials will be asking a number of questions about motive. We don't yet know anything about the suspect, although we are hearing reports that one is in custody. And the natural thing that law enforcement will also be doing right now is making sure that this person does not have any accomplices. So therefore, that's why they're asking the local community to please shelter inside. Do not complicate the situation so police can get a handle on exactly what's going on.
And you can see in that video they have built out a pretty wide perimeter in that area, a lot of police presence there. Let's bring in former FBI agent and ABC News contributor Brad Garrett. Brad, can you walk us through what police are doing right now? We know they are inside that synagogue.
So it would appear, Eva, you got one shooter who is in custody, but the problem is until you actually clear the building, go in every room, every broom closet, every corner of that synagogue, you can't say for sure it's a clear building because did he bring someone with him? Are there possible explosives? My guess is none of that's going to be the case, but you can't take a chance. So that's why we probably are not going to hear anything for a period of time. I will say this. They said there's 3 police officers shot. Most synagogues have extra security, and many times the police are the extra security because of the obvious. And so they may have confronted this guy early on, and sadly got shot.
Let's bring in former FBI Special Agent in charge and ABC News contributor Steve Gomez, talking about those officers that were shot. And we're only hearing about multiple casualties, not a specific number. Can you comment about what these officers may have been facing and just how violent this may have been?
Yes, good morning, Eva. So it's a very interesting dynamic here. You've got 3 officers shot. You have a suspect who is described as having surrendered. I have to believe that when the suspect was inside, the officers made entry because they probably heard either shots being fired or a lot of yelling and screaming, and they had to make entry. They had to try to bring a stop to this situation. So they go in there, and obviously since they were shot, it must have been a gun battle. So it's very interesting that the suspect has surrendered because a lot of times these suspects, when they get into that kind of gun battle, I mean, they're there to die for their fight. I mean, whatever they're there for, they realize they're gonna probably end up going at it with the police. So it's interesting that he surrendered. It'll be a big question as to what happened at that point, but hopefully these officers are safe and they're going to be okay.
Let's bring in former Dallas police chief and ABC News contributor David Brown. You were the police chief in Dallas during that mass shooting that happened there. When officers go into a situation like this, how do they walk into a building?
You walk in very carefully, but with a sense of urgency because time is of the essence to stop the shooter from causing more harm. And you consider all the possibilities as you walk through this building, searching for any and all threats, both from persons like the shooter, and we have to consider bombs at this point in the conversation because this is front of mind for police given the situation of the bombing with the packages being mailed. So we have to consider all and any possibilities of why this happened, motives, and there's a really rush from an investigative standpoint to figure out what the motivation from this person was. So so going to his home, friends and family, all those considerations are being played out now.
Let's check back in with Pierre. Because this is a house of worship, a synagogue, how are investigators dealing with this differently than they would, say, another building that wasn't a house of worship?
Well, obviously that is of concern. But the first thing law enforcement wants to do, number one, they want to get the situation under control. Number two, as soon as they identify the suspect, they will immediately begin a background check on this person to try to understand what the motive may or may not be. Obviously, because it's a place of worship, a synagogue, there'll be questions about whether this could be a hate crime, but we just don't know enough information to make those kind of decisions. But that is among the kinds of questions that law enforcement will be asking.
We're watching this video here of this neighborhood, and you can tell looking at it that it is very much a residential neighborhood, Pierre. We saw the police come over specifically to talk to cameras because of the concern. How does that affect what they do as they try to get through the synagogue and when they were trying to find the active shooter and trying to clear that scene?
Well, public safety becomes such a concern in these moments, and law enforcement has learned that they need to communicate with the public quickly to tell them where to go, where not to go. In this situation, they wanted people to stay away from that area until they could get the situation under control. So, you see this protocol, unfortunately, playing out time and time again because we're having so many mass shootings on such a regular basis. This is now almost routine in this country to see multiple people shot in situations just like this.
We're watching video now. It looks like SWAT team members going in and out of that area. What are they doing at this point as they walk back and forth?
Well, right now, as Brad talked about, you want to search that synagogue room by room, make sure there are no other accomplices, make sure there are no other weapons, make sure there are no booby traps, make sure there are no bombs or anything like that. That is the primary thing that the SWAT teams will do. And then you have layers and layers of other law enforcement officials who will be involved in forensics. But right now, again, the main thing is to help the injured, make sure that they get the place secure, and make sure there are no more accomplices.
They specifically told people in that neighborhood to lock their doors and stay inside. Why would they tell them to do that?
Again, until you can make sure that there is no other suspect, that there is no one else involved, you want to make sure that people have locked and secured their residences to make sure that there are no more hostage situations potentially. So this is sort of standard operating procedure, and law enforcement's getting good at it because they're having so many situations like this play out.
And we are hearing that multiple law enforcement agencies are responding to this scene. We've heard that the state police are also involved here as well. Pierre, as they all descend on this area and they begin to work together, how does that all work out?
Well, there are these bulletins that are sent out electronically to tell law enforcement the basics of what's known in a situation like this so that people are prepared. If there's any information about the suspect or whether there's others, that would be sent out as well. And they know right now, because of 9/11 and other terrorist incidents, that they have to work together as a team. You have joint terrorism task forces where law enforcement are communicating with each other all the time. And in this situation, the state police, the FBI, the ATF, the Pittsburgh PD, all of these folks have working relationships, and they apply those relationships just for times like this.
All right, thanks, Pierre. Let's bring in Alan Birkin. He's a rabbi emeritus at the Tree of Life Synagogue. This is a synagogue that you have attended for quite some time. Can you tell us what it's like?
Well, unusually, for the last couple of years, we actually have three different religious groups that are meeting in our building on Saturday morning with three distinct services. That's been going on for a couple of years, and it's sort of exciting on one level for an old 160-year-old synagogue to have that situation. But this morning, my wife was sick and asked me to please not go to services, so I did not go. So I can't give you a first-hand account, except that I live around the corner, and the police knocked on my door and said, do not go out of your house. We have an active shooter.
So there were police officers coming around door to door to check with the neighbors?
That's correct. We live in a very Jewish neighborhood. Squirrel Hill is a part of the city of Pittsburgh. It's about 40% Jewish, and it's known as a Jewish community.
Now, have you heard from any of your friends who are inside the synagogue?
No.
Any of your friends that potentially have gotten out?
I have not heard from any of them, no.
So at this point, you're waiting to hear anything?
That's correct.
Anything that you're hearing from law enforcement other than just to stay in your home?
Just the fact that he's I heard he was in the third floor of the building, which is where my study is. That's the only office up there. So they have him secured in there, as far as I know.
You describe that neighborhood as a neighborhood that's known for having a Jewish community in it. What is it like as far as crime goes? Is it a crime? Is there a lot of crime in that neighborhood, or is it normally pretty quiet?
It's absolutely no crime. It's an amazing neighborhood. It's hard to believe it's a city neighborhood. It's dominated by the Jewish community center 4 blocks away. It's dominated by kosher stores, kosher bakeries, all kinds of Jewish gift shops, bookshops, a number of synagogues. Ours is one major synagogue, but there's at least 5 other synagogues within 1 mile of where we are, 2 miles.
You say it's the major synagogue. How many people would have been inside that synagogue this morning?
I'm going to guess about 75, but it's just a guess. It depends on whether there's an event. We did not have a bar mitzvah in the building this morning, thank God. We did last week, so there would have been hundreds and hundreds, but this week there wasn't.
They're reporting now multiple casualties, 3 officers shot. When you hear that information, what goes through your mind?
I'm stunned. It's the first time hearing it. I'm so sorry. So sorry. I happen to be a police chaplain. I'm going to get my outfit on and go out there if they'll let me. I don't know if they'll let me.
All right. Well, thank you for taking your time out to speak with us this morning. Let's check back now with Pierre Thomas. Any updates that you're hearing as far as what's happening there on that scene now?
Again, we're working all of our sources, trying to get additional information. As you can imagine, law enforcement's focus is getting support there right now. The federal government has not gotten much of a readout that they can give us just at the moment, but we're working it very closely and hope to have something additional shortly.
All right, thanks, Pierre. And we are hearing that NYPD and LAPD both sending extra teams to synagogues and Jewish locations throughout those 2 cities. Once again, there has been a shooting at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Authorities are reporting multiple casualties with 3 officers wounded, and a suspect is in custody. We're going to return now to regular programming. You can get the latest anytime at abcnews.com. I'm Eva Pilgrim in New York. Have a good day.
This has been a special report from ABC News.